Ha, this guy's toast.
So about a year ago, I made this video called Inconsistency in Hearthstone. And one of the things I brought up was the problem with Druid of the Claw, how its text behaves inconsistently with almost every other Druid minions, such as Flame, Fang, and Saber. If you haven't seen the video or don't know what problem I'm talking about, definitely give it a watch, but to sum it up, Druid of the Claw has a transform mechanic, like Druid of the Flame, Druid of the Fang, and Druid of the Saber. As in, when you play it, it turns into a new minion. But unlike all of those cards, it doesn't actually have the word transform anywhere. And when you look at Ancient of War or Robocop, minions that share identical text as Druid of the Claw, none of them transform, they just gain the stats as a buff.
Where shall I strike?
A couple of weeks after I released the video, Blizzard did a response video titled Consistency in Hearthstone, where senior designer Brode gives his reasonings for why they originally worded Druid of the Claw that way.
Now, the problem is there's another card, Ancient of War, who is written very similarly. And you can choose either +5 attack or +5 health and taunt. The problem is they work differently once they're in the battlefield. Let's say you choose the +2 health and taunt on the Druid of the Claw and the +5 health and taunt on the Ancient of War. The Ancient of War gives itself a buff that could be silenced off. So if you silence an Ancient of War, it goes back to 5/5 minion. Now, the Druid of the Claw shapeshifts and transforms into a new minion. And that minion is a 4/6 with taunt. So if you silence it, it stays as a 4/6. But the words are written so that you'd think they do the same thing. So this is kind of the crux of the issue, is that they read like they do the same thing, but they don't do the same thing. And so, but they use consistent wording, but they have inconsistent effects.
I would definitely give it a watch if you have the chance, as this inconsistency is something they're aware of, and Ben goes into detail why they chose to keep it that way.
And Druid of the Flame, or actually a better example is the Robocub from Goblins vs. Gnomes. That says choose one, +1 attack or +1 health. Well, is that a transform? Does that work like Druid of the Claw? It's written like Druid of the Claw. Or does that work like Ancient of War? Because it's written like Ancient of War also. You know, the truth is that it doesn't matter often, actually, in gameplay, which of those two it is, because you're not often bouncing your own minions or silencing your own minions as a Druid. It's more important if you're trying to play around, maybe your opponent's silences or bounces or things like that. So it is important, but it isn't critical. It's what we call like an edge case. And the question is, do you gain more from making the card easier to read, especially if it's in the classic set, which is the set we drive new players towards, or do we gain more from being consistent across cards? So at the time, when we were in a world with just classic and basic cards, we felt like making the choice cards easier to parse, which means like you read the card once to understand what it does, was better than making the card very clear how it works in the edge case, which is you're playing against an opponent who has silence or sap. So if you think about just the difference between the two ways we could write Druid of the Claw, I think the version that it's at right now, which is choose one, charge, or +2 health and taunt, boils down that decision to kind of the core thing. You're not comparing, 4/4 with charge versus 4/6 with taunt. Okay, the attack is the same, so now I'm choosing between, okay, where how much difference is 4 and 6? It's not hard to do, but it is like milliseconds less calculation time because we just do the math for you. We say, look, this is what you're really deciding between.
If you check the comments of that video, it's pretty much everyone asking Blizzard to update the text. While it might have made sense back at launch to word it inconsistently to make it simpler, Hearthstone has since introduced new cards that have caused some issues with the text, which is one of the main reasons I'm bringing this issue back up again. With the introduction of the grimy goons in the Gadgetzan expansion, here are all the cards capable of buffing minions in your hand. Now, due to the nature of transform mechanics, Druid of the Claw, Flame, Fang, or Saber will not keep any buffs from hand.
strike?
Here's a report by someone who experienced this issue and had to go post on the forums looking for answers. And here's another person sending me a message on Twitter asking me why his Druid of the Claw didn't keep his buff. Now, had this happened to something like Druid of the Flame, I can easily go, well, it says transform right there on the card, which is why you didn't get to keep the buff. Which I know isn't the greatest answer, but at least I can defend Blizzard. But since it's with Druid of the Claw, I can't really point to the card and say, look, it has the word transform on it. I have to say, well, remember all those times that you played Druid of the Claw in the past and it got a new art and the health buff wasn't green? See, that was actually a transform mechanic. Even though there's no text on the card that indicates that, that is what it is. Which is not a great answer to give. Now, it is uncommon for Druid of the Claw to get any hand buffs, since none of the hand buffers are directly available to Druid. Before a game that prides itself on RNG as much as Hearthstone, and with hundreds of thousands of games being played every day, this situation does come up from time to time. And if Blizzard adds more hand buffing mechanics in future expansions, it'll happen even more. One of Hearthstone's biggest advantages is that it's a digital game. Blizzard can make a change or a fix to a card, and every existing card out there will be updated to reflect that change. You don't get that with traditional trading card games like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh!, who have to go through all sorts of revisions and rule updates when there's an issue with a card. There's no way for them to physically change all those cards that are already out there. Hearthstone doesn't have that problem. And yet here we are, with a card that has inconsistent text for over 2 years. Text that people have been asking Blizzard to change since the release of the game. Text that could easily be changed to fit all the other existing Druid cards. Text that the community agreed should have been changed when Blizzard made a video specifically talking about it. Text that are not causing people to go on forums to ask if it's bugged. Text that will continue to cause issues as more and more cards and mechanics are added to Hearthstone. So there you have it. My argument for why I feel it's time for Blizzard to finally fix Druid of the Claw's text. Now I want to hear from you guys. How do you feel about all this? Do you feel like it's important for Blizzard to make these changes when they have to? Or is this a non-issue that isn't worth pursuing? Let me know in the comments below. And as usual, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Take care, guys.
Hey, lights out.